And the question is about Donald Trump policy, and we know that his promise from the campaign that he will finish the war during 24 hours is over. And now the process looks, let's say, more complicated with a lot of question marks. And my Ukrainian colleagues ask me not to comment this policy because the process is going. So I don't want to be troublemaker. So I will be not. So the first question is to one of friends of Donald Trump. I don't know if I can say one of the best friends of Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, or some who added maybe only friend of Donald Trump. Could you tell us what is your opinion, what is your judgment, how the situation can develop?
Well, I thank you very much, Alexander, for bowling me that gentle lob. I think the truth is that Donald Trump said he was going to talk to Putin before the US election. We shouldn't be scandalized by that. He said he was going to try to fix the war in Ukraine decisively. We shouldn't be scandalized that he's breaking a lot of crockery. On the other hand, personally, as I think I've said earlier on, I find some of the things we're hearing from Washington now absolutely repulsive about the origins of the war in Ukraine. They're not true. They're demonstrably false. To say that Ukraine started the war is the most egregious victim blaming that I've ever heard. As I said earlier on, it's like blaming the United States for shooting down Japanese Zeros at Pearl Harbor. It's absolute rubbish. But we have to look at what is really going on. And this whole thing, this terrible spat, this terrible eruption of negative rhetoric began, as far as I can see, maybe you'll correct me, but it began about 10 days ago. It got particularly bad because the United States, the president wasn't getting satisfaction over his plan for a deal on the minerals, was he? And that thing wasn't going well. And since then, the pressure has been ratcheted up, and all of us have been finding our nerves strained more and more as we hear more and more ugly sentiments about Ukraine, about Volodymyr Zelensky, and so on. And clearly what the President of the United States wants is to do a deal on the minerals, on the rare earths. And look, I don't know how many people in this room have actually seen this deal or seen the text of the latest text. Hands up who thinks that they've seen the latest text. Okay, I thought so. Give yourself away. Look, I don't think, frankly, I think it's better than it was. And I think it's a considerable credit to Ukrainian negotiation. And I think there are things in it that are very positive for Ukraine. And frankly, I think that I certainly think we should be making that point to our Ukrainian friends. This minerals deal commits the United States to a free, sovereign and secure Ukraine. It commits the United States to long-term financial support for the stability and economic development of Ukraine. Yes, it has some language in there about sharing the profits from this fund, the investment fund, but there will be not a penny accruing to that fund unless you have a free, sovereign and secure Ukraine, to which the United States says in the opening recitals of this document it is committed. In fact, Donald Trump is committed to that. So I look at this document and I see positive things for Ukraine. And I also think, quite frankly, my dear friends, I don't think we'll move out of the current very negative cycle unless and until that thing is cleared one way or the other, right? So my strong advice to everybody in this room is to try to get hold of, just get the other people who've actually got the draft and turn them upside down, shake it out of their pockets and read it. Because I think it's worth reading, and I think it contains the seeds of hope and of progress. And yes, it's extortionate looked at one way, but so was Lend-Lease in 1941, wasn't it? You Americans. absolutely stiffed us. He took away our bases in the Caribbean, in Newfoundland. You gave us a load of absolutely useless destroyers. And we were paying, as I've said before, until 2006. The British taxpayer was writing out checks to the United States of America for your support in the Second World War until 2006. Ed Balls was the last person to pay back the US. So I say to my dear Ukrainian friends, I understand your horror at the language that you're hearing about Ukraine. I understand how troubling it is to think that this deal might be rapacious for your country. But I really think that we need to move through this phase, recognize what this deal really is. This is something that Donald Trump can say to his right wing, to the Republican Ukraine skeptics, that he has secured, and I think it holds the prospect of progress. So having listened to everybody today, having studied what's going on, I think that is the way to float this boat off the rocks, get that deal done, get the United States locked in again, and there's good language in that deal about a long-term economic partnership between the United States and Ukraine. And I say to all our Ukrainian friends, I love you, but who do you really want to have a long-term economic partnership with? The United States or Vladimir Putin's Russia? And, you know, we all know what the choice really ultimately is. And I think that for all its defects, for all its weaknesses, it doesn't go far enough on security. The deal that is on the table represents progress for Ukraine. So, in a nutshell, will Donald Trump end the... I can't read what the question is. I don't like the language that is being used. I don't like the style of negotiation that is going on, but I think that progress can be made, and I'm by no means as pessimistic as some of the other people that I've heard talk about this thing today. Get this deal done, and I think we'll start to see some progress.
Thank you very much. That is very important what you said, that the language of President Trump is ugly, but we have a very good translator who can make this language much more pleasant for us, especially for Ukraine, and this man is Boris Johnson. So that is good. That is good job for you.
Well, if that is to be my historic function, then I don't really mind. I just think that what obviously doesn't work is when everybody freaks out and goes, "Oh, Trump," you know, and Europe goes around and everybody says it's the end of NATO, it's the end of the West, it's the end of the Atlantic Alliance. You know, you read all this drivel. Who likes to read that? Who really, really is happy? It's Vladimir Putin. So the more we react, the more we freak out, the more, in the end, we're doing the Kremlin's bidding. Look at what the Trump is actually offering. Get this thing done and move on. He, in the end, the person who's in trouble here is Putin. Because if the United States is committed to a sovereign Ukraine, as it is, that means that a sovereign Ukraine can decide whatever military clubs it wants to join. A sovereign country can decide or to join any organization it chooses, or indeed to leave any organization it chooses, as the UK once did. A sovereign country can decide which other countries it's going to allow to send troops to help produce a deterrent force. And that's what Ukraine, I hope, is going to do, and is going to invite UK troops and French troops and troops from other European countries to provide a deterrent force in Ukraine once the peace deal is done. That is what a sovereign country can do. And the reason why Ukraine should do that, and the reason why the UK and other countries should comply, is precisely because it is what Vladimir Putin does not want. He wants to control Ukraine. And what Ukrainians have, and what they're fighting for, is the chance to be free from that control.
Right, and please remember what you said now, because you will see the reaction of Putin when the decision that European troops will come to Ukraine. So that's, you will see, and be not so optimistic as you are now. Stephen, what is your opinion? How Donald Trump can end this war?
Well, I agree with almost everything the Prime Minister said. I'd add two things to his account on the Lend-Lease program. That we need to remember that President Roosevelt, like President Trump, was similarly elected in a politically unfriendly environment for engaging in a European war. In fact, he campaigned very much on the basis of keeping America out of the war, and the Lend-Lease program wasn't a policy of choice, it was a policy of necessity. The other part that the Prime Minister meant to add was, and the war was won, and Britain is free. So maybe that's our goal here with Ukraine as well. There's a tendency when especially European audiences look at President Trump to recognize very quickly that he is an unconventional politician, an unconventional character. And likewise, very quick reaction that he uses very unconventional rhetoric and unconventional approach. But then somehow it falls apart, and many of our European friends begin to try to understand it in a conventional manner. So President Trump says something, it must happen. President Biden said, withdraw from Afghanistan. 2 weeks later, we had the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. That's not how President Trump creates policy. President Trump is in a constant rolling debate. He's maneuvering for position, he's negotiating, he's leveraging, but it is incumbent upon those who want a good outcome for the policy to fight right to the last minute, to put the right choices in front of the President of the United States. I think the President is positively inclined towards helping Ukraine to reach a just and peaceful settlement in this war, and I think the President is pushing our policies in that direction. It's up to us to help steer it in that direction.
Thank you very much. Please. Gabrielius, your perspective, how you see Donald Trump politics and the chances to the end of the war and these conditions, what Trump is proposing?
Well, thank you so much. Indeed, it's a great honor to be here and try to contradict two gentlemen who just spoke before me. And Boris Johnson did a great job in trying to correct some things that Donald Trump mentioned. So I will continue in that direction and try to correct certain things that Boris Johnson said. One of the things that is lacking from the document that has been presented to Ukrainians, at least the one that I've had a chance to take a look at, it lacks any mention of Ukrainian sovereignty. No, it does. And the problem here is that the document in its current form would actually work even if Ukraine is no longer a sovereign country. That means that somebody will pay the bills, about $500 billion to a US fund, continue paying for decades in the future. And it could be Russian Ukraine, it could be, I don't know, Mr. Medvedchuk, is he still around? It could be his Ukraine. The deal doesn't care about a democratic, free, independent, and sovereign Ukraine. Please allow me a couple of more minutes. The second thing about the negotiations. It is like President Trump, who is surely, nobody doubts that he's a negotiator. But if he was a driver of a car, for the first thing that he did, instead of sitting by the wheel, he took the keys of the car and handed them over to Putin. And the phrase that made it so was that he said, I want a deal fast. Time is only one commodity that you cannot pass to the other side when you're negotiating. And Putin now has President Trump where he wants him. Putin can say, well, I'm not meeting you tomorrow. President Trump is in trouble. And it means that he needs to have Putin at the table at the time that they agreed. And that means that Putin can now ask for anything that he wants. And this is the main worry that we have. Putin already got Americans asking for a new election. Putin already got Americans saying that no NATO. Putin already said Americans saying that the reality of occupied territories is that they will stay with Russia. Putin got so much by the only thing suggesting that he will be there on the time when President Trump wants him. What should we do? On first thing, on the minerals deal, I think that as a European, I think that Europe should help. We have lots and lots of legal advice and capability in European Commission. Let's offer that advice to Ukrainians. Let us look into the deal. We can offer suggestions. We can offer advice. We have many legal experts. We won't ask for minerals. We won't ask for money. We can do it just for the country which is candidate country to join EU. The second thing is we have to get President Trump out of this self-imposed limitations on time. Fast deals don't work. Let's convince him. He needs more time. His advisor, Kellogg, talked about 100 days. Well, could be 100, could be 80, who knows? Let's take it slower. Let's reduce the speed. Let's talk to his voters. Let's explain that that was a very, very good idea to have a fast deal. But Putin is to blame. We cannot give that leverage to Putin. If we slow things down, we might work actually the deal that would work for Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Boris, do you want to? Please, microphone too.
Well, listen, Gabrielius, I hesitate to contradict you, but I'm going to. Maybe the draft I've got before me is caduc, as they say in Brussels, but it's very clear in the second recital that the United States, the people of the United States desire to invest alongside Ukraine in a free, sovereign, and secure Ukraine. Right? I mean, maybe you've got a different document, but that's the one I've got. And it actually goes on to say some even better things. It goes on to say that contributions from the fund will be reinvested at least annually to promote the safety and security and prosperity of Ukraine. It talks about a long-term financial commitment by the United States to the stability and development of Ukraine. The Ukrainians have negotiated very, very well, my friends. I don't know, Gabrielius, what you've been looking at, but this is a document they should. The last thing I would do is get the jurist linguiste of the European Commission involved in screwing this thing up even further, because I think that really is a recipe for total disaster. And I just say to everybody here, the one message I would wish to get over. I had the good fortune to be on the plane with 3 European foreign ministers, Gianni de Michaelis, Minister Hans van den Broek of Belgium, and Jacques Pos of Luxembourg, when Europe decided that it could solve the problem of the Balkans conflict and the aggression of Slobodan Milosevic. Do you remember that? And Jacques Pos said, "This is the hour of Europe." You remember? And Europe was going to take it on, and America was going to be nowhere. We were going to do it, but nothing happened. And we had the various catastrophes that then followed in the Balkans. And frankly, Milosevic was not put back in his box until the Americans came along and did lift and strike. And that's the reality of what happened in the box. What I'm trying to say to you is believing that this crisis can now magically produce a European solution, magically produce a European military, a European army, European resolve that is enough to help the Ukrainians without the Americans. If you seriously believe that, that is delusional. It is vital to keep the Americans involved. I think that this document, and maybe I'm wrong about the text, but I think this document is a very good step in the right direction. You should stick with it.
Okay, but Boris, during the Balkan crisis, Balkan wars, we had strong American leadership. And I remember also, I've been exactly this time in all these NATO summits, etc. I remember Clinton position and his team, and it was a real leadership. Today we have a new situation. America says that European issues are European problems, and we have how Donald Trump said, beautiful ocean among us. You know, we are protected. We have an ocean, and that is a new situation. That is absolutely, that is a new era. Not Balkans, but today. And of course, I don't know how Europe will react, but that is absolutely new factor and new quality. So
but dear Alexander, Mr. President, we know how Europe has already reacted, and we've seen it. Europe held a meeting in Paris a week ago today, which was more or less a complete shambles. And with great respect to our beloved European militaries, they are not producing a rival plan to support Ukraine yet of any real credibility. And what I hope is that this week in Washington, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron will put together a plan for a European deterrent force that will complement what Trump is setting out here in the minerals deal and the economic deal with Ukraine.
Okay, Boris,
and will offer, and together with American backup,
no one of European leaders said that we are okay because America is over the ocean. You know that it was, I quoted the President of the United States. But Stephen, please.
Mr. President, I lived through the Balkan Wars as well, working in Washington on European policy at the time, and America was an abject failure in the Balkans until the massacre at Srebrenica. In fact, the leadership was non-existent, and it was only when Congress stole the leadership away from the president by lifting the arms embargo that the United States acted under the leadership of Richard Holbrooke. Then the United States acted with leadership, but it took a very long time to get there. You know, Gabrielius, what I would say to you is, all of your concerns are reasonable, but you are assuming a conclusion from the rhetoric instead of you assume that we're at the end instead of the beginning. And I'm not here to tell you that everything's going to be all right, but I am here to tell you that we continue to press on these policies and take the practical steps, like the Prime Minister is describing, to keep advancing. You start with a minerals document, and then you interpret it as you go along in a constructive way. You could paint a worst case scenario, but you can also paint a best case scenario here. And that's our job, is to push it towards that end.
Gabrielius.
Yeah, well, short reaction. When we are expecting best scenarios and worst case scenarios for a country like Ukraine, which is at war, or for a country like mine, which is close to war, worst case scenario means non-existence, stopping of existence of a country. Therefore, for us to start thinking about the best outcome in this time, at this time, I'm afraid that it means complacency. What I'm arguing in my country, back home, prepare for the worst scenario. Act like US is no longer here. This is what we have to be thinking about. If Donald Trump next week tweets that, I've always supported Ukraine, this was my always goal, and nothing has changed, well, good for him, good for us. But today, we have to act like his goals are more aligned with those of President Putin's. That is my problem.
That all of Europe for the last 10 years was acting that way. Lithuania has, but that all of Europe was acting like they may need to do this without the United States. They probably would have even stronger support from the United States right now.
That's exactly right, Gabrielius. I agree with you completely. Europe needs to do exactly what you say. And the paradox is that's exactly what will entice the Americans, confirm the Americans in their desire to support Ukraine. How can they support Ukraine if they don't think that we support it, that we're serious ourselves? And we haven't been. The $300 billion. What about the $300 billion? When are we, how often have we talked about unfreezing that $300 billion? I don't believe a single European government has actually tabled a proposal to do that.
No,
right?
Again, it's not true.
It's not true.
Boris, look, there are countries in Europe who contradict this, and who are not supporting, and it's not a good policy choice. I agree with this, and I will repeat the phrase that I've said at the morning. Europe either steps higher from this, more federalized, and becomes a real continental power that it can be. It has all the potential to become that, or it might face its final hour. With Trump, without Trump, but it doesn't matter. Putin is out there, he's threatening us, and US is retreating. That is the main problem here.
Yes, Boris, last...
No, I have a crack record on this, but, I love Europe and the European countries, and I heard that
we know how much you love Europe.
Passionate appeal from our Polish parliamentary colleague earlier today for support for Ukraine. But Alexander, as far as I understand it, Poland is actually saying that they won't take part in the deterrent force that the UK and France are proposing to put together in Ukraine. Maybe I misunderstood what Donald Tusk said, but that was what I...
No, because Donald Tusk is 2 months before presidential election, so that's...
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's okay. Well, that's fine. But that's great. But then people like you need to step up and say, ignore Donald Tusk when he says that Poland won't take part. Poland is going to take part.
Poland should
it's
take
going to be
part.
Great.
Yeah. No, dear friends. So I think the first problem, because we have to finish our extremely interesting discussion, and my message to my British and American friends is, please convey to President Trump and his administration that the main goal of Putin is not to finish this war, not to organize ceasefire, but finally to have entire Ukraine in his hands, yes, as a part of Russian zone influence. And if you will make these negotiations, policy, deals, etc., with the naivety, which is very typical for American policy in many, many decades, that result will be very obvious. That's first point.
Can I just say, Alexander, that I hesitate to say this, but America has a population of roughly 330 million people. The European Union alone has a population of about 510 million people. By my maths, the average American taxpayer is paying considerably more for the military support.
Okay, no, that is something what I don't discuss. We have to do it.
Let me repeat that point. Because, this is why Donald Trump was elected with a mandate to... The average American taxpayer is paying considerably more per head than the average European taxpayer for the military support of Ukraine. Okay? Now, in those circumstances, he is entitled to ask Europeans to do more.
Tell you,
and we should, frankly, not freak out and not say that...
Sure, that's true. We have to pay more. But tell me, and please understand that all this money for military expenditures for a very long time, it was not a charity. It was not a philanthropy. America built such imperial position in the world. That is a part of the history.
Mr. President, I can assure you that the Americans are very aware that Vladimir Putin does not want a negotiation. He wants Ukraine.
Yeah.
And we also are very aware that our investment in European security is an investment in our security.
Yeah. Oh, very good. I agree. Absolutely. That's true. That is our common security. And I think we have to spend more money. There's no doubt. And I think Poland is a good example. More than 5% of GDP. And we need a lot of money for education, for healthcare system. But we spend for defense. That's what we understood, and we will do, despite changing governments and presidents, etc. And the problem is we need not only the peace here, not only ceasefire, we need the peace and just peace. And how to achieve it, we'll see what will happen. And only last point, what I want to underline, when we speak about the money, I understand, that all these expenditures, costs, etc. But please add to this bill also the cost or the price of the people, of the victims, of the injured people, on the divided families, destroyed cities and villages. Everything happened here in Ukraine. And that is also something that is not zero. And please, speaking about 350, please add this account to this bill, because without that it would be very unjust.
Unfreeze Putin's assets. Why are we hanging around?
Yeah, we have to do it. It was okay. It was interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much. I tell you, our task was extremely difficult because Donald Trump promised to solve to find the peace during 24 hours. And we tried to find the peace during 30 minutes. You know, that was more complicated. But thank you, Boris. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Gabrielius. It was really very, very interesting discussion.